Hi students, this is Mr. Allen, your geometry teacher. Today we are going to look at section 1.7. Section 1.7 is on midpoints and the distance formulas. These are things that you've actually done in Algebra 1, so this probably is not anything new, but maybe you need a refresher. So we'll find out. Our objective is to find the midpoint of a segment and find the distance between 2 points on coordinate plane. So there's going to be three formulas today. The first formula is the midpoint formula on a number line. So if you look at our diagram here, you can see that we have 3 points, A, M, and B. And if I want to, M is going to be what we call the midpoint. It's the middle point. And to find the midpoint, you just average the coordinates of the other 2 points, A and B. So in this example, lowercase a, when you see a lowercase a like this down here, that's just the coordinates. So the coordinates of A is little a, if you will, and the coordinates of point B is little b. So you just add those two values together and divide by 2. So this is your formula for the midpoint on a number line. It's A plus B divided by 2. So let's look at an example of that. So let's say we have a number line, which we do, and we have points A and B, which form a segment, and we want to find the coordinates of the midpoint of this segment. So we want to know what is the exact middle point of the segment AB. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to know what little a is, which is the coordinates of point A, which appears to be here at -4, the coordinates of B, which appears to be right in between 8 and 9, or 8 and 10, so I would assume that that's 9. So for us to find the midpoint of our segment AB, we just need to do A plus B divided by 2. In other words, we need to do -4 plus 9 divided by 2. So that's going to give us 5/2, which is 2.5, or you could call that 2 1/2. And if you kind of just eyeball where the middle of that segment is, the midpoint be right there in the middle, and so that would be the midpoint. We'll call that midpoint M. We have another midpoint formula. This one's on the coordinate plane. So if we're not on a number line, but on the coordinate plane, you actually do the exact same formula. You just do it once for the x coordinates and once for the y coordinates. So you're going to take the average of the x coordinates and then take the average of the y coordinates, and then you'll get your midpoint. So that formula would be x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2, comma, y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. So that's how you get the midpoint. So let's look at an example of that. It says calculate the midpoint of a segment with endpoints 1, 6, and 7, 20. Okay, so, well, I'm going to do this one first without the graph, and then we'll look at the graph. So we're going to see if this actually works. So these are the x coordinates right here. It's the first value in the coordinate plane. So this is x1, this is x2. So to find the midpoint, we're going to do, remember, we're doing x1 plus x2 over 2. Then we've got to find the average of the y coordinates. So that's y1. Oops, that's y1. That's y2. So we're going to do y1 plus y2 all over 2. So this is how we're going to get our answer. Let's go ahead and do our answer here in green. So the midpoint is going to be x1, which is 1, plus x2, which I think we said is 7. We need to add those together and divide by 2. And then we got to do y1, which is 6, plus y2, which is 20. And then we need to divide that by 2. So let's see here. 1 plus 7, that's 8. 8 divided by 2, that's 4. So it looks like our midpoint is going to have an x coordinate of 4. And then the second one's a little bit harder. We got to do 6 plus 20. That's 26. And 26 divided by 2, I think that's 13. So it looks like our midpoint is at 413. So now I've got a coordinate plane here. I'm kind of a little bit over, but that's okay. So my first point was at 1, 6, which would be right about here, I think. So it'd be right there. My second point is at 720. I'm going to have to move my picture here a little bit. 720, which is going to be way up here. And so if we had a line that we drew between those two guys, so there's our midpoint or our segment. So let's see if indeed 4 and then up 13. So 4 all the way up to 13, which is, wow, right there. Perfect. We nailed it. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So that's 2 examples with midpoints. We got one more example with a midpoint. So here they're telling us the midpoint. They tell us that the midpoint is at right here at -2, 1. And they tell us that this one endpoint is at -5, 7. That's this guy over here. And they want us to find the other midpoint, or I'm sorry, the other end point. So they want us to find point D. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the formula. And if you remember that the formula says that it's x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, comma, that's equal to the midpoint, right? That's their midpoint here, and I'll just call it midpoint, and I'm just going to call it, I don't know. Well, what is it? Oh, we know what the midpoint is here, don't we? The midpoint here is -2, 1. So that formula would give us that for an answer. Give us the answer -2, 1. Well, we could just call this right here. We'll call that point. We'll call that point number 1. In other words, this -5 is going to be x1, and that 7 is going to be y1. In other words, we've got -5 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, 7 plus y2 divided by 2 has to equal -2, 1. This one's a little bit harder. So I wonder if you guys could do this in your head. Can you do this in your head? If I know, for example, that's my y coordinate and that's my y coordinate, this is basically saying what number plus 7 divided by 2 gives you 1. Do you know what number that would be? What number plus 7 divided by 2 would give you 1? It's kind of a tough question. So let's do the algebra here. So let's do 7 plus y2 divided by 2 equals 1. So now I got to multiply both sides by 2. So I'm going to put a little arrow here because I'm running out of room. So that's going to give me 7 plus y2 equals 2. And now I need to subtract that 7 over. So it looks like y2 is going to be -5. Looks like y2 is going to be -5. Similarly, I could play the same game with the x's. So this is my x's, which gives me this. So I'll ask the question again. I'm going to try to squeeze this in here. -2. What number plus -5 would give, divided by 2, would give you -2? Let me say that again. What number plus -5 divided by 2 would give you -2? Do you know what the number is? Well, again, we could work it out. Multiply both sides by 2. So you get -5 plus x2 equals -2. Now we need to add 5 to both sides. So it looks like x2 is going to be, well, when I take -2 plus 5, I think that's, oh, I didn't do that right. I'm sorry. -2 times 2. That should have been a -4 right there, right? 2 times -2 is -4. So what's -5 plus -4? You guys, I'm losing it here, sorry. When I add -5 to both sides, I'm going to get 1. The answer is 1, right? If you take -5, if you want to move it over the other side, you have to do the opposite. So you got a +5 to both sides. So -4 plus 5, that's going to be 1. So we got our x's and our y's. So the answer here is going to be 1, -5. 1, 1, negative 5. Sorry, that was kind of rough there. Okay, moving on. Next thing we have here, the distance formula. Again, this is an Algebra 1 thing. You've probably already seen this before. It's derived from the Pythagorean theorem. But to find the distance between 2 points on the coordinate plane, you're going to take the x-coordinate of the second point minus the x-coordinate of the first point. You're going to subtract them and square, plus you're going to do the y-coordinate of the second point minus the y-coordinate of the first point, and you're going to square, add those two guys together and do the square root. This should look familiar to you. This, again, this is from Algebra 1. So let's just go ahead and crank out an example of that. I'll write that formula again up here. Distance equals the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. So this is x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2. You probably remember your algebra teacher going through that with you. So to find our distance, we are simply going to do the square root of this. So we're going to do, well, let's see here. It says I got to put in x2 first, so that's 7. So I'm going to do 7 minus, and then I'm going to minus x1. Well, x1 is 1 squared plus, then I'm going to do y2, so that's 10 minus y1, which is 2 squared. So all I've done now is I've substituted all those values in to the corresponding part of the formula. So let's go ahead and do the work here. So 6 minus 1, or 7 minus 1, that's 6. We got to square that, plus 10 minus 2, that's 8. We got to square that. So 6 squared is, I think, 36. 8 squared is 64. 36 plus 64. Let's see here. I think that's 100. And then finally, what is the square root of 100? I think it's 10. So I try to make this one work out kind of nicely. Okay, so again, kind of an Algebra 1 thing. Basically, if we want to graph this here, just to give us an idea of what that would look like graphically, our first point is at 1, 2, so we come over 1 and go up 2, so that'd be right there. Our second point is at 7, 10, which is way up here. And then if we draw the line between those two guys, I'm telling you that that distance there, that distance between those 2 points is 10. Last but not least, we've got one here where you're going to need a calculator to do this one, because we're going to have to estimate it with a calculator. I'll give you the exact answer, but we're going to do a calculator with it too. So we're going to do the exact same formula again. I'm going to do it a little bit faster this time. Okay, so I'm going to let this be my first point. I'm going to let this here be my second point. Okay, so the distance is going to be, and if you want, you could pause the video and try to do this on your own. It's going to be the square root of, so that's going to be what? 2 minus negative 2 squared plus 4 minus negative 1 squared. Okay, so remember, that's my y, that's my x2 minus my x1, my y2 minus my x1, or my y1. Okay, so let's see here. Plus or minus a negative is plus a positive. Minus a negative is plus or positive. So let's see here. 2 plus 2, I think that's, so that's going to be 4 squared plus 5 squared. Okay, so then let's see here. I think that's what, 16 plus, and then 25. And then just to make sure I don't screw this up here, add those together and I get 41. That's what I thought. So that's the square root of 41. Now you cannot simplify that radical. That's all that it is. But I just want to show you that they don't always come out to be nice numbers. So the square root of 41, and I'm just using my calculator to calculate that, this distance is approximately 6.403. So it's approximately that long. If you told someone that you needed square root of 41 feet of something, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. But if you tell them that you maybe need 6.403 meters of something, They probably can understand that a little bit better. That brings us, I think, to the end of our presentation. So I'm going to stop there. Have a great